January 29, 1945. 3:12 p.m. Holzheim, Belgium. Snow falls like silent ash across the broken village. The Battle of the Bulge is nearing its violent conclusion, but here in this frozen corner of Belgium, the war is still very much alive. American paratroopers from Company C move cautiously between shattered houses and burned-out barns. Smoke drifts through the air. The sharp smell of gunpowder lingers with every breath. Among them walks First Sergeant Daniel Keller. He is not the tallest man in the company. Not the strongest either. At 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighing barely 150 pounds, Keller looks more like a factory worker than a battlefield legend. But appearances lie. For the last 2 hours, Keller and his exhausted men have been clearing German resistance from Holzheim house by house. Every door could hide a rifle. Every attic could conceal a sniper. Every cellar could contain soldiers waiting to ambush them. So far they have captured 80 German prisoners. 80. That number alone should have been victory enough for the day. But war rarely follows logic. The prisoners have been gathered inside the courtyard of a stone farmhouse on the edge of the village. Keller assigned 4 American guards to watch them, all he could spare. The rest of his company is still fighting scattered German defenders across Holzheim. Keller checks his watch. He should return to headquarters. He should coordinate reinforcements. He should rest. Instead, something pulls him back toward the farmhouse. Instinct. The same instinct that has kept him alive through nearly 2 years of war. He walks alone through the snow-covered alley between 2 damaged barns. His Thompson submachine gun hangs casually across his chest. Steam rises from his breath in slow, heavy clouds. He turns the corner. And freezes. The courtyard is no longer secure. 80 prisoners have become 90 armed German soldiers. Keller's 4 guards kneel in the snow, disarmed, their helmets lying beside them. German rifles and MP-40 submachine guns are being distributed from a pile of confiscated weapons. A German lieutenant stands in front of the formation, barking orders in sharp, furious bursts. The soldiers move quickly, efficiently. They know exactly what they're doing. Preparing an ambush. If these Germans escape, they will strike Company C from behind. Keller's entire unit could be wiped out within minutes. The German officer spots Keller instantly. Their eyes lock. The officer strides forward through the snow, boots crunching loudly with every step. Without hesitation, he raises his MP-40 and slams the barrel against Keller's stomach. The metal is cold enough to burn through his uniform. The officer shouts something in German. Keller stares at him. He doesn't understand a single word. The officer screams louder, his face turning red with rage. He gestures violently toward Keller's weapon, clearly ordering him to surrender. Behind the officer, 90 German soldiers watch in tense silence. Keller slowly scans the courtyard. 90 enemy soldiers. 4 captured Americans. 1 exhausted sergeant standing alone. The math is simple. Survival is impossible. Any reasonable soldier would surrender immediately. The war is nearly over anyway. Germany is collapsing. Many men on both sides have already accepted that surrender is often the only way to live long enough to see home again. But Keller's mind drifts somewhere else. December 17, 1944. The Malmedy Massacre. 84 American prisoners lined up in a frozen field and executed by SS troops after surrendering peacefully. Keller remembers the photographs. The frozen bodies. The bullet wounds in their heads. The boots of dead men still pointing toward the sky. He made a silent promise that day. He would never surrender. Not to them. Not ever. The German officer screams again, shoving the weapon harder into Keller's stomach. And Keller starts laughing. At first it's only a quiet chuckle. A low, strange sound that escapes his throat almost by accident. The officer pauses, confused. Keller laughs louder. The sound echoes across the courtyard, sharp and completely out of place. Several German soldiers exchange uncertain glances. A few even smirk nervously, unsure how to react. The officer screams again, now furious and humiliated. Keller bends forward, clutching his stomach as if the entire situation has become the funniest moment of his life. He tries to stop laughing. He can't. Later he will never fully explain why he laughed. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was fear breaking loose in the strangest way possible. Maybe it was calculated deception. But in that moment, it works. The officer hesitates. Only for 2 seconds. 2 seconds is an eternity in combat. Still laughing, Keller slowly raises his hands toward his Thompson submachine gun. He moves deliberately, carefully, like a prisoner finally preparing to surrender. The German officer relaxes slightly. He believes he has control. Keller grips the weapon's handle. His laughter suddenly stops. The transformation is instant. In one explosive motion, Keller swings the Thompson downward, pulling the trigger before the officer can even blink. The submachine gun roars to life. .45 caliber rounds tear through the officer's chest at point-blank range. The German collapses backward into the snow before he can fire a single shot. Keller pivots, spraying bullets across the closest cluster of soldiers. The Thompson spits 30 rounds in less than 3 seconds. The recoil pounds against his shoulder as bodies drop across the courtyard. Chaos erupts. German soldiers shout in panic. Some try to fire back. Others scramble for cover. Many freeze in complete disbelief. The magazine empties. Keller drops behind a wagon, ejects the empty magazine, and slams a fresh one into the weapon with flawless muscle memory. He rises again, firing non-stop. "Grab their weapons," he shouts to his captured men. The American guards scramble across the snow, grabbing rifles from fallen Germans. Within seconds they join the firefight. Bullets crack across the courtyard. One American soldier beside Keller is struck and collapses instantly. Keller barely notices. He continues firing, moving constantly, refusing to give the Germans time to regroup. The courtyard becomes a storm of gunfire and screams. The Germans expected prisoners. Instead they found a hurricane. Within 45 seconds, 21 German soldiers lie dead in the snow. Dozens more are wounded. The surviving soldiers throw down their weapons and raise their hands, shouting surrender in broken English. Silence slowly returns to the courtyard. Smoke drifts from Keller's Thompson. His chest rises and falls violently as adrenaline surges through his veins. Around him, snow turns crimson under the fading afternoon light. One of his guards approaches cautiously. "Sergeant, are you okay?" Keller exhales slowly. "Yeah," he mutters, staring across the battlefield. Then he shakes his head and adds quietly, "That was the stupidest plan I've ever made." But deep inside, Keller knows something else. That moment did not begin in Holzheim. It began years earlier. Back in a steel town where survival meant learning to fight long before the war ever started. And long before he became the man who would laugh in the face of 90 enemies. Long before Holzheim. Long before the laughter. Long before the battlefield turned him into a legend. Daniel Keller was just a boy trying to survive. August 3, 1918. Braddock Valley, Pennsylvania. The town lives under a permanent cloud of black smoke. Steel mills roar day and night along the Monongahela River. Sparks rain from factory chimneys like fiery snow, lighting the sky even after sunset. This is where Keller is born. His father works 12-hour shifts inside a blast furnace, shaping molten steel for railroad tracks and ship hulls. The work destroys men slowly. Burns, broken bones, lungs filled with metal dust. Most workers never live long enough to enjoy retirement. Keller learns early that life here is measured in survival, not comfort. By the time he turns 10, the Great Depression crushes America like a collapsing building. Factories shut down. Paychecks vanish. Entire families line up outside soup kitchens just to eat one meal per day. Keller watches his father lose his job during the winter of 1930. 4 months, the family survives on government bread and watery stew from charity kitchens. Keller begins working odd jobs to help keep food on the table, delivering newspapers, carrying coal, repairing broken fences for neighbors who can barely afford to pay him. Responsibility hardens him faster than childhood should allow. At school, Keller is quiet. He isn't the strongest or the smartest, but teachers notice something unusual about him. He never panics. Even during fights or emergencies, he stays calm while others lose control. By 16, he is already helping raise his younger sister after his mother falls ill with pneumonia. Keller cooks meals, washes clothes, and works evenings at a hardware store. By the time he graduates high school in 1936, college is not even a dream. The family needs money, not diplomas. He takes a full-time job as a store clerk. He could have lived his entire life behind that counter. But history had other plans. September 1939. Germany invades Poland. Europe explodes into war, though most Americans still believe the Atlantic Ocean will keep them safe. Keller listens to radio broadcasts describing battles in places he has never heard of, Warsaw, Dunkirk, Norway. He feels something stirring inside him. Not excitement. Curiosity. By 1941, the war is spreading across continents. Congress expands the military draft as tension with Japan and Germany rises. On July 12, 1941, Keller receives his draft notice. He folds the letter carefully and places it inside his jacket pocket. His father watches silently from the kitchen table. "You going to wait for them to call you?" his father asks. Keller shakes his head. No, he replies quietly. I'm volunteering. Fort Benning, Georgia. November 1941. Keller volunteers for the Airborne Infantry, one of the most dangerous assignments in the U.S. Army. At the time, paratroopers are still experimental. Jumping from airplanes into enemy territory sounds insane to most soldiers. Casualty rates during training alone are high enough to scare away many recruits. That's exactly why Keller chooses it. Airborne training is brutal by design. 5 weeks of relentless physical punishment push recruits beyond human limits. They run miles before sunrise carrying heavy packs. They climb rope towers until their hands bleed. They practice falling from wooden platforms again and again, learning how to land without breaking bones. Half of the volunteers quit or fail. Keller never does. Instructors notice his endurance. He rarely complains, rarely talks, but always finishes whatever challenge is thrown at him. Then comes jump training. The first time Keller climbs inside a C-47 transport aircraft, his heart pounds against his ribs like a drum. 30 paratroopers stand shoulder to shoulder, weighed down by 60 pounds of gear. Rifles, ammunition, grenades, survival kits. The aircraft climbs to 1,200 feet. The red light glows above the exit door. Wind screams through the metal fuselage. Keller watches the jump master check each man's parachute harness. Some soldiers whisper prayers. Others stare blankly at the floor, trying not to think about gravity waiting outside. The light turns green. Go. Men begin stepping into empty sky. When Keller reaches the door, every instinct inside his body screams for him to grab the frame and stay inside the aircraft. Instead he jumps. The wind slams into him like a hammer. The ground spins below in a dizzying blur. For a split second, terror grips his chest. Then his parachute opens. Silence replaces chaos. He floats gently toward the earth, realizing something powerful. Fear does not disappear. It can simply be controlled. Keller earns his jump wings and joins Company C, 509th Parachute Infantry Regiment. The unit ships to England in late 1943, preparing for the Allied invasion of Europe. Here, Keller transforms from quiet recruit into trusted leader. Many soldiers in his unit are barely 20 years old. Keller, now 25, becomes someone they naturally follow. He speaks little, but when he gives orders, men listen. His commanding officer once describes him simply. He's the kind of soldier who doesn't need to shout. He just walks forward, and everyone follows. June 6, 1944. D-Day. The largest amphibious invasion in human history begins under cover of darkness. More than 13,000 American paratroopers prepare to jump into Nazi-occupied France hours before Allied troops land on Normandy's beaches. Keller stands inside another C-47 aircraft, gripping his rifle as anti-aircraft explosions shake the sky around them. Bright tracer bullets streak past the windows like glowing spears. The aircraft drops dangerously low to avoid enemy fire. The jump will be far more dangerous than training. The green light flashes. Keller jumps into history. Normandy is chaos. High winds scatter paratroopers across miles of countryside. Some land in flooded fields and drown under the weight of their equipment. Others land directly inside German defensive positions and are killed before cutting free from their parachutes. Keller lands hard in a farmer's field. Pain shoots through his ankle immediately. He suspects it may be fractured, but he forces himself to stand. The mission matters more than injury. He hides his parachute and begins moving through enemy territory. Over the next several hours, Keller gathers lost paratroopers scattered across the countryside. Soldiers from different units join him, desperate for leadership. Within 2 days he commands 18 men. They are surrounded by German patrols, miles away from Allied forces. For 10 days Keller leads them through occupied France. They travel only at night, hiding inside barns, forests, and abandoned houses during daylight. Several times, German patrols pass within yards of their hiding spots. Keller refuses to engage unless absolutely necessary, conserving ammunition and avoiding detection. Despite his injured ankle, he insists on walking at the front of the group, scouting danger before his men encounter it. On June 16, Keller successfully leads every soldier back to Allied lines. Not one man is lost. The experience changes him forever. He learns something critical about war. Leadership is not about rank. It is about responsibility. By late 1944, Keller has already survived more combat than most soldiers endure in an entire lifetime. He earns multiple commendations for bravery and tactical leadership. But Europe is far from liberated. Germany prepares one final desperate counterattack that will test every soldier on the Western Front. A battle that will push Keller closer to the moment where 90 enemy soldiers will stand before him. And laughter will become his deadliest weapon. September 17, 1944. The Netherlands. Morning fog clings low across endless green farmland as hundreds of Allied aircraft roar across the sky. The ground below looks peaceful, windmills turning slowly, rivers winding quietly through villages untouched by war. But above them history is unfolding. Operation Market Garden. The largest airborne assault ever attempted. More than 35,000 Allied paratroopers are preparing to drop deep inside German-occupied Holland. Their mission is bold, almost reckless: seize a chain of bridges stretching 60 miles toward the German border. If successful, Allied armored divisions will drive straight into Germany itself, possibly ending the war before Christmas. Inside a C-47 transport aircraft, Staff Sergeant Daniel Keller adjusts the straps of his parachute harness. Around him, paratroopers check weapons in silence. Each man knows the operation could either become the war's greatest victory, or its worst disaster. The aircraft shakes violently as it crosses enemy territory. Anti-aircraft shells burst around them like black thunderclouds. Metal fragments rattle against the plane's body, echoing through the cabin. Keller glances down the line of soldiers beside him. Most are barely older than teenagers. Sweat mixes with camouflage paint on their faces. The red light glows above the jump door. Then it turns green. Go. 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 Paratroopers leap into the open sky one after another. Keller steps forward and jumps into the roaring wind. Below him, Holland spreads out like a painting. Rivers cutting through farmland, narrow roads winding between small villages. His parachute snaps open, jerking him violently upward. For a brief moment there is silence. Then he notices something wrong. Smoke columns rise in the distance. Heavy gunfire flashes near the intended drop zones. German resistance is stronger than intelligence reports predicted. Keller lands in a muddy field near the town of Nijmegen. He cuts free from his harness and immediately assembles his squad. German machine guns chatter from tree lines nearby. Allied gliders carrying reinforcements are descending toward the battlefield. Slow, vulnerable, unable to maneuver. Then Keller sees them. 3 German anti-aircraft gun emplacements positioned on elevated ground overlooking the landing zone. Massive 20mm flak guns fire relentlessly at incoming Allied gliders. Explosions tear through several aircraft before they even reach the ground. Inside those gliders are artillery crews, medical teams, and reinforcements that Keller's regiment desperately needs. If those guns remain active, hundreds of Allied soldiers will die before the battle even begins. Keller studies the position through binoculars. Approximately 20 German soldiers guard the guns, protected by sandbag fortifications and interlocking firing lanes. Standard military doctrine recommends attacking fortified positions only with overwhelming numerical advantage. Keller has 3 men beside him. He lowers the binoculars. "We're taking those guns," he says calmly. The soldiers exchange stunned looks. They are outnumbered nearly 7 to 1. But Keller is already moving forward. The 4 Americans crawl through tall grass and drainage ditches, slowly closing the distance toward the German position. Gunfire continues overhead as gliders explode in the distance, raining wreckage across the countryside. At 50 yards, Keller signals his men to split into 2 flanking positions. Then he stands and charges directly toward the guns. The Germans react too late. Keller fires his M1 carbine while sprinting uphill through exploding dirt. His men follow, throwing grenades into the defensive trenches. The first gun crew is eliminated in seconds. Without hesitation, Keller leaps into the second emplacement, firing point blank into stunned German soldiers attempting to reload their weapon. 2 fall instantly. Another tries to raise his pistol before Keller strikes him with the rifle butt. The third gun position continues firing, unaware that the first 2 have already been destroyed. Keller grabs a captured German grenade, pulls the pin with his teeth, and throws it directly into the final gun pit. The explosion silences the last flak gun. Within less than 2 minutes, 20 German soldiers lie dead or wounded. The sky above clears as Allied gliders land safely across the fields behind Keller's position. Reinforcements pour into the battlefield, soldiers who would have been slaughtered if Keller hesitated. For this action, Keller earns the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest decoration for valor in the United States military. But even as medals begin stacking onto his uniform, the war grows darker. December 16, 1944. The Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Winter grips Europe with brutal force. Snow blankets forests and villages under freezing gray skies. American forces believe German armies are too exhausted to launch another major offensive. They are wrong. Before dawn, over 400,000 German soldiers launch a massive surprise attack across the Ardennes. Tanks smash through American defensive lines. Entire units collapse under the sudden assault. The Battle of the Bulge begins. For Keller's regiment, survival becomes a daily gamble against freezing temperatures, artillery bombardments, and relentless German counterattacks. Weapons jam from ice buildup. Soldiers suffer frostbite within hours if exposed. Trucks refuse to start in temperatures dropping below -15 degrees. Yet the worst moment arrives one day later. December 17, 1944. Near Malmedy, Belgium. An American artillery observation battalion surrenders after being surrounded by German SS armored troops. The prisoners are marched into a snow-covered field and disarmed. Then, without warning, the SS opens fire. Machine guns cut down helpless prisoners standing shoulder to shoulder. Wounded soldiers are executed with pistol shots to the head. 84 Americans die in minutes. News of the massacre spreads rapidly across Allied lines. Survivors stumble back into American positions, describing the horror through frozen tears and shattered voices. Keller listens to the reports in stunned silence. He has seen death before. But this is different. This is execution. That night, sitting beside a small foxhole fire, Keller stares into the flames while snow falls quietly around him. He speaks only once to his closest friend, Corporal James Holloway. "If they ever take me prisoner," Keller says slowly, "they better kill me first." Holloway does not respond. He knows Keller means every word. Over the next month, Keller and Company C fight continuously across frozen Belgian villages. Supplies run dangerously low. Reinforcements arrive slowly. Every mile gained costs blood. By January 1945, the German offensive begins collapsing under Allied counterattacks. American forces push forward, reclaiming lost territory village by village. That is when Company C receives orders to capture Holzheim. The mission appears simple on paper. But Keller quickly realizes his unit is severely understrength. Their executive officer has been killed weeks earlier. Many veteran soldiers are wounded or dead. Desperate for manpower, Keller makes an unusual decision. He gathers supply clerks, cooks, radio operators, men who have rarely fired weapons in real combat, and transforms them into an improvised infantry platoon. "Today," he tells them, "you're paratroopers." The men march 15 miles through waist-deep snow toward Holzheim while German artillery shells explode across distant hills. Several soldiers collapse from exhaustion, but Keller refuses to slow down. By the time they reach the village, a blizzard begins sweeping across the countryside. Visibility drops. Wind howls through broken rooftops. The battle for Holzheim begins in total white chaos. House by house, Keller leads his makeshift platoon through fierce German resistance. Grenades explode inside narrow hallways. Machine gun fire tears through walls barely thicker than paper. Despite overwhelming odds, Company C captures the village after hours of brutal fighting. 80 German prisoners are secured inside a farmhouse courtyard. Exhausted and bleeding, Keller leaves 4 guards behind and returns to help clear remaining resistance in other parts of Holzheim. He believes the worst is over. But a German winter patrol approaches the farmhouse wearing white camouflage cloaks identical to American snow gear. The guards hesitate for just 1 second. It is enough. The Germans overpower them, free the prisoners, and rearm 80 captured soldiers. Within minutes, 90 German troops stand ready to launch a devastating ambush against Keller's scattered company. And moments later, Keller unknowingly walks back toward the farmhouse, straight into 90 armed enemies waiting for him. January 29, 1945. Holzheim, Belgium. 4:12 p.m. The blizzard is growing stronger. Snow whips across the shattered village in violent gusts, covering bodies, broken weapons, and shattered rooftops under a growing white blanket. Smoke rises slowly from damaged farmhouses as Company C continues clearing scattered German resistance across the outskirts of Holzheim. Staff Sergeant Daniel Keller moves carefully between ruined stone walls, checking positions, shouting short orders through the wind. His improvised platoon, clerks, cooks, and supply drivers turned infantry overnight, follows him with exhausted determination. They have been fighting for nearly 7 hours. And somehow they are still alive. Keller wipes frozen snow from his eyelashes and glances toward the farmhouse courtyard where 80 captured German prisoners were being held under guard. He plans to check on them quickly before organizing evacuation toward the rear lines. Routine. Nothing unusual. He signals Corporal James Holloway to follow him, and together they begin walking toward the farmhouse. The closer Keller gets, the quieter everything feels. Too quiet. He notices something first: footprints. Hundreds of fresh boot prints crisscrossing the snow around the courtyard entrance. Too many for 4 guards and 80 prisoners. The snowstorm should have covered older tracks, but these are new. Sure. Fresh. Keller slows his pace. His instincts begin whispering danger. He steps around the corner of the farmhouse. And stops. The courtyard looks completely different from how he left it less than 30 minutes earlier. 90 German soldiers stand scattered across the snow-covered yard. Many are holding rifles. Others are grabbing weapons from a growing pile in the center of the courtyard. The 4 American guards kneel in the snow with their hands behind their heads. The prisoners are no longer prisoners. They are reorganizing for battle. Several German soldiers are positioning machine guns along the stone walls, aiming toward streets where Company C units are still clearing buildings. Keller immediately understands what is about to happen. If 90 armed Germans launch an attack from behind, his scattered company will be slaughtered within minutes. Before Keller can react, a tall German officer notices him. The officer steps forward quickly, snow crunching beneath polished boots, MP-40 submachine gun already raised. In seconds, the muzzle of the weapon presses hard into Keller's stomach. The courtyard falls silent. Every German soldier watches. The officer shouts a command in German, his voice sharp and furious. His face is red with rage and adrenaline. He screams again, louder this time, gesturing toward Keller's weapon. Surrender. Drop your gun. Keller stares at him blankly. He does not understand German. The officer shouts again, veins bulging in his neck, spittle flying across Keller's frozen jacket. Behind Keller, Holloway freezes, hands slowly rising in surrender. The kneeling American guards watch helplessly, knowing exactly what is about to happen. The mathematics of survival are impossible. 90 enemy soldiers. 2 Americans standing. 4 more already captured. Every rational decision leads to surrender. But Keller's mind drifts back to Malmedy. 84 American prisoners standing in snow. Machine guns opening fire. Bodies collapsing into frozen fields. The memory burns inside him like ice. Keller knows one thing with absolute certainty. He will never surrender. And then, Daniel Keller starts laughing. At first, it is a small chuckle, barely audible beneath the howling wind. The German officer pauses mid-command, confusion flickering across his face. Keller laughs again, louder this time. His shoulders shake as he bends slightly forward, gripping his stomach as if the entire situation is absurd beyond belief. The officer screams louder, pressing the MP-40 harder into Keller's chest. Keller laughs harder. The courtyard becomes surreal. Several German soldiers exchange confused glances. 1 or 2 begin smirking, unsure whether the American soldier is insane or mocking them. Holloway watches in horror, certain Keller has finally broken under stress. But Keller is not broken. He is thinking. Every second of confusion is a gift. He notices the German officer relaxing slightly, believing Keller is finally submitting. The officer gestures sharply toward Keller's submachine gun hanging over his shoulder. Drop it. Keller nods slowly, still chuckling under his breath. His hands rise toward the Thompson submachine gun strapped across his chest. The German officer watches carefully but allows it. He believes he has already won. Keller grips the Thompson's wooden stock. He slowly lifts it off his shoulder, pretending to comply. Snow falls gently between them as dozens of German soldiers relax their posture, convinced another prisoner is about to surrender. Then Keller moves. In one lightning-fast motion, he swings the Thompson forward, pulling the trigger before the German officer can react. The weapon roars to life. 30 rounds of .45 caliber bullets explode into the officer's chest in less than 3 seconds. The impact throws him backward into the snow, dead before his body hits the ground. Keller pivots instantly, sweeping the Thompson across the nearest cluster of German soldiers. The automatic fire tears through winter uniforms, shredding flesh and bone. Men scream and collapse in crimson snow. Chaos erupts. The Thompson's magazine empties in seconds. Click. The courtyard freezes again for one terrifying heartbeat. 90 Germans stare at Keller, stunned by what just happened. Weapons begin rising toward him. Keller drops the empty magazine and slams a fresh one into place with practiced precision. His hands move faster than thought, muscle memory forged through endless airborne training. He pulls the bolt back. The Thompson roars again. At the same time, Keller screams toward his captured guards. Grab their weapons. Now. The kneeling Americans dive toward fallen German rifles scattered across the courtyard. Seconds earlier they were prisoners. Now they are soldiers fighting for survival. Bullets tear through the courtyard in every direction. German soldiers scramble for cover, but confusion paralyzes their coordination. Their officer is dead. Orders vanish. Panic spreads like wildfire. One German rifle shot strikes Holloway beside Keller. The corporal collapses instantly into the snow. Keller doesn't look down. He keeps firing. He moves forward through the courtyard, cutting down enemy soldiers at close range. Smoke pours from the Thompson's barrel as brass casings scatter across frozen ground. The American guards join the fight, firing captured rifles from behind. Overturned crates and fallen bodies. The Germans find themselves trapped inside a deadly crossfire they never expected. Seconds stretch into eternity. Then suddenly, silence. 21 German soldiers lie dead across the courtyard. 24 more writhe wounded in the snow. The remaining 45 soldiers slowly drop their weapons, raising shaking hands above their heads. The battle lasted less than 60 seconds. Daniel Keller stands in the center of the courtyard, breathing heavily, steam rising from his uniform, smoke curling from his Thompson submachine gun. Snow continues falling quietly around him, covering blood, bodies, and shattered weapons. One of the surviving American guards stares at Keller in disbelief. How did you do that?" he whispers. Keller looks around at the carnage, then shrugs slightly. "That," he mutters quietly, "was the stupidest ambush I've ever seen." But the battle for Holzheim is not over. Gunfire still echoes across distant streets. Keller knows German reinforcements could arrive at any moment. He orders the surviving prisoners secured under heavy guard and immediately returns to lead Company C through the final stages of the village clearing operation. Behind him, the courtyard slowly disappears beneath falling snow. But the legend of what happened there is already spreading. January 29, 1945. Holzheim, Belgium. Evening. The snowstorm has softened to a cold drizzle, leaving the village silent except for distant artillery echoes. The battlefield looks almost peaceful now, but the destruction remains. Shattered homes, splintered doors, and blood-stained snow stretching across the courtyard where Daniel Keller performed one of the most extraordinary feats of World War II. Company C begins regrouping. Survivors check their comrades, assess injuries, and gather weapons. Keller moves methodically through the streets, ensuring no threats remain, issuing short, efficient commands. Even his improvised platoon, the cooks, clerks, and supply drivers who had never fired a combat shot before today, now act like seasoned soldiers, securing prisoners and covering the streets. His mind, however, cannot rest. Keller walks back to the courtyard, surveying the aftermath. 21 German soldiers dead. Over 40 captured. 24 wounded. And all within 60 seconds. For a brief moment, he allows himself to feel the enormity of what has just happened. Yet the war is far from over. By January 30th, reinforcements arrive, securing Holzheim completely. The surviving American soldiers who had watched Keller stand alone against nearly 100 armed enemy combatants are in awe. Whispers of the man who laughed at death spread quickly across the regiment. Soldiers speak in hushed tones. "He didn't even hesitate. Did you see the way he moved? One man, 90 enemies, and he won." Commanding officers take notice as reports of Keller's actions reach the brigade headquarters. The official recommendation for the Medal of Honor is drafted immediately. Witness statements from his fellow soldiers detail the surreal courage displayed in the courtyard, how a man outnumbered, facing certain death, refused to surrender, turned confusion into opportunity, and acted decisively to save the lives of his comrades. Keller himself, however, reacts with quiet humility. Sitting by the fire in a makeshift command post, he tells Corporal Holloway, "I just did what I had to. Any other man would have done the same." But his men know better. The psychological weight of the battle is not lost on Keller. While the act itself lasts less than a minute, the memory remains vivid. He cannot forget the faces of the German soldiers, some terrified, some confused, some still firing before they fell. He remembers Holloway's collapse beside him, the sound of brass casings clattering through snow, the chaos turning into a frozen tableau of death and survival. Later, during interviews and military debriefings, Keller struggles to articulate why he laughed when the German officer shouted at him. He calls it a mix of disbelief and strategy, a way to buy crucial seconds. Other soldiers insist it was courage, pure and instinctive, honed by years of discipline, hardship, and relentless training. The official Medal of Honor citation reads, "Although overwhelmingly outnumbered and facing almost certain death, First Sergeant Daniel Keller, pretending to comply with the enemy's command, slowly unslung his submachine gun and with lightning motion, neutralized the German officer and turned upon the enemy, killing 21 soldiers and compelling the surrender of the remainder, saving countless lives and demonstrating conspicuous gallantry beyond the call of duty. News of Keller's heroics spreads through the regiment and eventually to the entire 82nd Airborne Division. Fellow soldiers begin telling the story to new recruits, passing it along like a legend. 1 man, 90 enemies, 1 Thompson, 60 seconds. Yet Keller remains quiet. He does not seek attention, does not write letters to newspapers, does not boast. After the Holzheim operation, he returns to lead his men through subsequent combat missions with the same calm precision. The war continues. Keller participates in several more operations in Belgium, Holland, and Germany. He earns additional commendations: the Silver Star for bravery during reconnaissance missions, Bronze Stars for meritorious service, and a Distinguished Service Cross for actions during the anti-aircraft gun assault months earlier. He is wounded 3 times in separate engagements, yet refuses to leave the front lines until his men are secure. Through it all, Keller remains the same man who once served as a clerk in a small Pennsylvania town. Humble, focused, disciplined, a man forged by hardship, refined by war, and tested in the crucible of combat. By May 1945, the war in Europe ends. Keller's regiment marches through liberated towns, witnessing both the devastation wrought by combat and the liberation of prisoners. Holzheim remains in his mind as a pivotal moment, the battle that defined him, the 60 seconds that transformed a soldier into a legend. When President Harry Truman presents Keller with the Medal of Honor at the White House later that year, the ceremony is brief but profoundly solemn. Standing in front of the nation's leaders, military brass, and fellow soldiers, Keller accepts the medal with quiet dignity. He does not boast. He does not claim heroism. He simply says, "I did what I had to do." The words are simple but the impact is immeasurable. For the men of Company C, for the soldiers saved in Holzheim, and for the countless others inspired by his courage, Daniel Keller becomes more than a soldier. He becomes a symbol of bravery, leadership, and the extraordinary potential of the human spirit under unimaginable pressure. May 8, 1945. Europe is finally quiet. The guns have fallen silent. Cities lie in ruins. Soldiers shuffle through the streets of liberated towns, eyes weary, bodies exhausted, hearts heavy with memories of friends lost and unimaginable horror witnessed. Staff Sergeant Daniel Keller, decorated hero of the 82nd Airborne, walks through one such town in Germany. The war that has shaped his every waking moment for nearly 4 years is over. Yet he carries with him more than medals. He carries the weight of survival, responsibility, and the stories of those he led and saved. Keller returns to the United States quietly, bypassing fame and headlines. Unlike other decorated veterans, he does not write books or tour lecture halls. He does not seek recognition or glory. Instead, he returns to Pennsylvania, the small steel town where he grew up, to serve his community in a different way. He takes a position with the Veterans Administration, working behind a desk, the same kind of work he had done before the war. Yet now, every form processed, every claim approved, every veteran helped carries the invisible imprint of someone who has seen the absolute worst humanity can do, and still chooses service over self. Life at home is steady but humble. He marries his childhood sweetheart, Gertrude, and they raise 2 daughters in a modest neighborhood. Medals are carefully stored in a case, rarely spoken of. Friends and neighbors know him simply as a kind, quiet man. But every so often, soldiers and visitors who know his story will ask about the Holzheim battle, about the moment when he faced 90 armed enemies and survived against impossible odds. Keller always responds the same way. "I did what I had to do. That's all." Yet the story does not fade. Among paratroopers, within the halls of military academies, in classrooms, and in the hearts of fellow soldiers, Keller's actions become legend. The 60 seconds in Holzheim are studied as an example of bravery, leadership, and the razor-sharp clarity of mind under extreme pressure. In the years following the war, Keller continues his life in quiet service. He helps veterans navigate bureaucracy, secure benefits, and rebuild their lives, much like he once led men through frozen forests and enemy territory. His courage in battle becomes mirrored in patience, guidance, and empathy off the battlefield. Decades later, historians and military enthusiasts examine the Holzheim confrontation, the anti-aircraft assault in Holland, and Keller's survival during the Normandy operations. Comparisons are drawn to some of the most famous Medal of Honor recipients, yet Keller's story carries a different resonance. It is not about fame but about extraordinary courage born from instinct, experience, and unwavering resolve. November 20, 1992. Keller passes away quietly at the age of 76. The world remembers him not for self-promotion, not for bravado, but for a life that exemplified courage in its truest sense, both in combat and in civilian life. He is laid to rest with full military honors, a hero among heroes, yet forever humble. In his obituary, one line captures the essence of the man. He faced death with a laugh, fought with unmatched skill, and lived a life of quiet dignity. At military installations, a highway, and even a veterans center bear his name. Yet for the soldiers who fought beside him, the story of Keller, the man who turned impossible odds into survival, the soldier who laughed in the face of death, continues to inspire. The story of Holtzheim is more than a tale of bullets and blood. It is a story about the human spirit, about the power of leadership, and about courage when the odds are mathematically impossible. Keller's 60 seconds in the snow became a lifetime of inspiration. In classrooms and briefing rooms, future soldiers study his actions not because they seek to emulate the violence, but because they understand the essence of bravery, thinking when others panic, acting decisively when hesitation is fatal, and protecting those who depend on you no matter the personal cost. Daniel Keller's life reminds us that heroism is not measured by fame, size, or strength. It is measured by actions taken in the moments when surrender seems inevitable, when fear is overwhelming, and when history is being written by those willing to act decisively. And in the village of Holtzheim, beneath the quiet snow, the legend of the man who laughed at 90 Germans and survived to save countless lives will never be forgotten. The end.